Hi everyone, I am recording our lecture on books and ebooks in my home library, and we're going to discuss how to look for books, what accessing books looks like in our current library state, and then I'm going to show you a little bit about the back end of library catalogs and what that looks like. I'm going to start by bringing up a PowerPoint so that we can discuss what books look like in the academic library. I'm going to put myself over in the corner here. Okay, so just so you know, this is going to be a captioned audio recording. I'm going to do it as or a video recording rather. I'm going to do it as an MP4, and then I'll put the transcript alongside it if you would like to have that as well. I'm going to try something a little bit different, and I'm going to record using Zoom and then upload it to a private YouTube channel. OCC uses this software called Panopto, and I don't think it responds really well to some people's computers depending on how new or old or updated your computer is. So we're going to try and do it in a more streamlined web-based way by putting the video on YouTube. So if you have any problems with this, and of course I will put this in the written information about this week's assignment, then let me know. Okay, so on books, finding books, and using books in your research assignment. So books in the academic library function in a couple of different spaces. First of all, libraries are transitioning to more ebooks in their collection rather than physical books, although there will still be physical books. Some of that has to do with accessibility. For example, if you are an online student who cannot get to an OCC library without a lot of hassle, then you can't check out a physical book. But if you are an online student and you have a computer, you can check out an ebook. So we do this so that accessibility, which is something that we focus on in the library, is available for everybody. Unlike public libraries, academic libraries have mostly scholarly titles. Although, I mean, we do have some popular titles, there's no question about it. But we focus more of our collection on things that are going to benefit you when you do a research paper or do research for, whatever class that you're doing. While we do have some popular titles, and I'll show you those as we go into those, the different records, we do like to focus a little bit on academic work so that you can see what it looks like and differentiate between scholarly monographs versus more of the popular books that are published by big publishers that are also called trade books. So in order to figure out how to identify a popular versus a scholarly book, know that scholarly books really like to talk about their author's credentials. They like to talk about their degree program, what they've taught, things that they've studied in the field. You're not going to find these in your average bookstore. Say, for example, locally, if you go to the Book Beat in Oak Park, or maybe you go to Schuler's Books in West Bloomfield, there's a bookstore in Farmington called The Road Less Traveled, and there's a bookstore, children's bookstore, I believe, in Rochester called Halfway Down the Stairs, and then, of course, the newer Sidetrack Bookshop in Royal Oak. You're going to find mostly popular titles. These are books that you would be able to read in a book club. You'd go to the library and see. You're going to see them for sale in non-bookstore businesses as well. But scholarly books are harder to find. They are written for an academic audience. They have a smaller print run. They number in the thousands, the tens, under 10,000 sometimes, rather than in multiples of hundreds of thousands. They're published by scholarly presses, which exist specifically to publish, and they have a few things that are going to differentiate them, such as a bibliography, footnotes, you've got references, an appendix or appendices, and an index which lists topics within the book themselves. So those are going to be written for an advanced population. Generally speaking, we look at lower level college through graduate school and faculty when we look at the audience for these. So it's a slightly narrower focus of what those books, the audience for them. Trade books, on the other hand, are written for a popular audience, and anybody generally with mid-high school, sometimes middle school reading levels will enjoy these books, which is not to say that if you read at a higher level, you're not going to enjoy them. They are just written in language that is more accessible for the general population. The author of nonfiction trade books are generally not experts in their field. Sometimes they are, and you will see experts in their field write bestsellers. For example, if you have heard of Peter Attia, who is a surgeon and is studying longevity, he recently had a book on the New York Times bestseller list called Outlive: The Science of Longevity. And he also has a podcast, but he also practices as a physician and has published in various journals under his, his academic title. You can generally buy these in bookstores. You can buy them online. You can buy them as ebooks. You can buy them in brick and mortar stores. Trade books or popular books are published by big publishers, and I have the example of HarperCollins, but you'll see Viking Penguin, Scholastic. There are some independent bookstores, or rather publishers, who have become more and more popular as well. And you can publish on Amazon as well if you would like to self-publish in some other platforms. So here is an example of a monograph. Here's the title and the publisher information. So we have Managing Information in Complex Organizations, and this was first published by M.E. Sharp in 2015 by Routledge, which is a publisher that is an imprint of what's called the Taylor and Francis Group. So a lot of these are like, you've got a hierarchy of businesses where you have an overall business, and then you have it parceled out so that Taylor and Francis is a database publisher as well. So they will have various databases, such as the databases that we looked at for our assignment 2, and you will have the publishing arm like Routledge, for example. And this is going to be something that is not going to be everybody's reading pleasure, right? Managing information in complex organizations. It's geared toward people who are looking at data and information, whether it's in a business or a nonprofit. And so we have a little bit of information about who the people who are publishing are. We have Kevin D'Souza and Tobin Hengsken, and they tell you within this audience blurb that these are people who are either completing, and for example, Kevin D'Souza is completing his doctoral work at the University of Illinois in Chicago, and these are some of the things that he has written and done over the course of his writing life. And Tobin Hengsken is the principal administrator for a business called Paradigm, and he's a doctoral candidate at Loyola University of Chicago. Maybe these two knew each other and met and decided to get together and write something. And here is his sort of resume of everything that he has been writing about. So this is a pretty intensive example, and I'm going to be asking you for example of author biography if you can find them. In monographs, these are written so that the information is close at hand. Sometimes you get that when you are looking at a book in particular, but when we go into looking at the records for books, you might not see that, so you have to dig a little deeper. So a popular book or a trade book is something like this. Now notice I've picked things that discuss information in some way, shape, or form because it's something that I'm familiar with. So here we have Information Wars with a subtitle, How We Lost the Global Battle Against Disinformation and What We Can Do About It. This was published by Grove Press, which is distributed by Publishers Group West. So if you know publishers, if you pay attention to this kind of thing, you know that Publishers Group West has been around for a long time. As the years have gone by, publishers have, instead of having like many publishers competing with each other, they have bought each other out and consolidated quite a bit. So we don't have as many bigger publishers. And here's an example of the author, as we call it, blurb, and some background information. So Richard Stengel was the Undersecretary of State for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs from 2013 to 2016. So he worked in the State Department. He was also an editor of Time, and he collaborated with Nelson Mandela. says that he is an NBC/MSNBC analyst and lives in New York. So we don't know where he went to school necessarily. And so this is sort of a giveaway that he's probably not an academic, which is fine. You don't have to be an academic to publish a book that is more academic in nature, but just know that if you are somebody who, or you're reading somebody who is a journalist, that they have been doing something fairly specific in terms of what their information and background is. And when they go into writing a book about this, they do it from the point of view of having to research it as well, instead of necessarily having the topic at hand. So how do you go about finding these kind of things? Well, library catalog systems are often called in shorthand in our particular profession OPACs, and that's a short term for online public access catalogs, and this term has been around for a long time, since at least the 1980s, when we started moving as a profession, not me specifically. I'm not that old. Started moving card catalogs into digitized systems in some way, shape, or form. And OPACs now, and for those of you who work in a library, you've probably seen this happen. OPACs are integrated into something that's called an integrated library system, or an ILS. We have moved into calling ILSs LSPs, library service platforms, as well. And you're not going to be tested on this. This is just more background information. And so when you have an OPAC, you have a back-end function that looks at the patron organization and some of the ways that we take in purchases, whether it's an electronic purchase or a physical purchase, and what the vendors are. And there are places in these, because these are essentially fairly complex databases that are all integrated together. A way of saying, for example, if you lost a book, how much the replacement cost would be, because we can directly tie that to the vendor invoice that we got and put into the system, we being the library. So we lease these. Very few people own OPACs. There are some big companies that do the leasing for this. And so if you're in the Detroit area, you've got the choice of working with a couple of different catalogs. You'll see one called Polaris or Leap for those who are in the catalog that uses that. There's Millennium or Innovative. It's III, and I can't remember what the III stands for, but it used to be Innovative. A lot of these systems have collapsed into each other and bought each other out. There are going to be some freeware-based OPACs, but those are fairly intensive when it comes to keeping everything up and running, and you have to have a specialist who knows how to work with whatever the underlying software is, like whether it's a Linux database or what have you. So we don't often see those in systems in Michigan, at least that I have seen. So different OPAC interfaces are going to be prevalent depending on where you are. So OCC has this thing called Primo, which is it's a company called Ex Libris that has now been bought by a bigger company called Clarivate, but still functions, I think, sort of independently. So this is what our online catalog looks like for Primo. So you can see it's fairly intensive. You have different defaults that you can use, whether it's the library catalog or articles or course reserves. And then you have different fields that you can put your information into. Contrast that with a public library OPAC, which tends to be a little bit less complex, because people who go into public libraries aren't necessarily looking to complexify what their search is. They often know what they want, whether that's a specific title or a type of book, a genre of book. So these are going to be set up a little bit differently, but they will function the same in terms of how they search. So changes that we're seeing within the OPAC environment is that we have a far greater use of eBooks, and this is going to be on the academic and the public library level as well. Maybe not so much in K-12, because the tactile book experience is still something that I think are let's just call it our paleo brain, especially a developing brain, is better at encompassing. But you will see some students, especially who are having their textbook as an ebook, and you will have them use something like Kindle or an app for their phone that's going to be compatible. Maybe they're using a computer to read this. When you have an ebook reader, if you don't have one that's set up with a proprietary interface, then oftentimes you use something called Adobe Digital Editions for reading a book. And this is something that we use at OCC. And if I can get it together to find something, we'll see what it looks like. There are going to be different ways to search for books, including using apps now. I don't know if you have a public library that you go to. My public library has an app. I didn't want to bring it up on the computer screen because it's a different kind of experience, but I do use my cell phone quite a bit to go in and take a look at what my account looks like and reserve books and maybe even some DVDs. So we're seeing these especially in public libraries. So if you have an interest in that, you're going to see a lot of different apps. Apps rather. I have talked about a couple of those. One is Hoopla, and there is one called Libby, which has taken over for Overdrive, although some people still have Overdrive. There are books for kids called Tumble Books, or I believe Raz Readers, and these are for like preschool kids through like early elementary or middle elementary school kids. And these are all subscription databases as well. These can be fairly expensive. For example, my library, which is the Farmington Community Library, leases Hoopla, and that can be $6,000 or $7,000 a month with a limited amount of books that any one patron can check out. I think we have, we can check out up to 8 titles, and that can be a book, it can be an audiobook, it can be a movie, it can be music, it can be a comic book or a graphic novel. So there's going to be a lot of media that's available to it, but you have a finite amount that you can check out at any one time because the library can't fund everybody's desire to do it. It's just horribly expensive, and the prices keep going up. So your assignment for this week is going to ask you to find books on your topic, and you'll be asked to find a scholarly book as well as a popular book. So I want you to use at least the OCC OPAC to look for books on your topic, and then I've given you a number of places where you can go to find other OPACs as well and see what you can find with that. Okay, that is our lecture, and I will put that up as a PowerPoint as well. And now I am going to show you what it looks like when you're actually searching. Okay, so I told you that there's a back end of any kind of OPAC. This is the back end of what we use at OCC. This is the other side of the Primo database that we search on. Oops, sorry. Let me make that bigger again. And this is the side called Alma. And as you can see, I have my own record up here so you can see what it looks like. Notice that there's a little ding on fines and fees. I think I became a librarian so that if I accrued any kind of balance that I wouldn't have to pay for it. I will eventually return these books, but right now anybody who checks anything out to me says, "Stacy, you have some overdues." And I say, "I know, it's really terrible, isn't it?" And especially my colleague Julia will say, "You're up to almost $650. And I'll say, "I'm so glad I don't have to pay that directly, because there would go at least a paycheck, right?" And she says, "Just wait." I'm like, "Julia, don't be mean to me." So anyway, that's our little banter. So notice that I have 18 books out that are encompassing this $644 probably. And it tells me, and this is something that you'll see when you go into the back end of the circulation end of things is that it gives you the author, the title, what the barcode is, when I loaned it, and when the due date is, who owns it, in this case the Southfield campus, and where it's located, the OCC Southfield Reserves, where it was checked out from, and what the call number is. And we could scroll down and see, all of my overdues as well. For example, here's one called Nexus, and one of your discussion posts is going to be about the first chapter of Nexus because it deals with how we conceptualize and organize information. So there's just a little preview if you wanted to get to it. So that's what the back end looks like. The front end is quite different. So this is Primo. And here's the library homepage. And when you go to it, you have the option to do a search everything if you would like to do that, which I give you the option to do. Just know that when you are looking for a book, make sure you click on this little radio button that says Books and Media. So you can do that if you'd like, or you can go up to Find Books in the library catalog and you can choose the library catalog. Look at all these drop-down boxes that you have though, or these options in the drop-down box. You can look for course reserves. You could look for any new books, eBooks specifically, videos that we might have, including online videos. You could interlibrary loan something and you can check out what your library card is, what's going on with that, your account to a degree. We're going to look at the library catalog right now. So a couple of things. The Library of Congress has Library of Congress subject headings and a Library of Congress classification system. So if you are searching for anything, the Library of Congress has what's called an authority control list where they have all this information. I'll link this to you in sort of our lecture notes when we discuss it so that you can take a look and see what it looks like. It's pretty complex. It's been developed over a number of years. If you are using a public catalog, a public library catalog, and you go to a public library, you're probably familiar with the Dewey Decimal System, which is a numeric system of categorizing, to a certain degree, nonfiction books. And then often you'll have fiction and other genres that are pulled out from that. Fiction actually encompasses part of that Dewey number, but because it is so big and because there's so much published within it, we tend to, as a profession, separate out fiction books from nonfiction books. We do the same type of classification in generally academic libraries because we use the Library of Congress classification system for that, and those are alphabet based. So if you've gone in and looked for books in an academic library, we don't start out with a Dewey number like 973 for US history, for example. We start out with D or E for American history or world history, and so that's how you'd go and look at it. I will tell you that behind me are my mostly nonfiction books, and I classify them by Dewey order rather than by Library of Congress. Okay, so let's look at this catalog because searching is going to take place here. Much like a database, you've got search boxes that you can put your search term in. So in my last one, when I did Boolean searching, I was looking at homocysteine, or rather I was looking at vegetarian diets. So I can do that same type of search, and I can use a Boolean search function of the or in here, right? And then I can put in heart health. And notice that I have search filters. So in these drop-down boxes, I can choose to say, oh, maybe I want a subject, because subject is looking at something specific, right? So I want a subject for vegetarian or vegan, and I want to do that in my second search term as well. And I do want to have this Boolean operator and we only get and, or, and not, right? So I want to have that because, again, I want to take those two terms like we do with Boolean stuff, and I want to marry them together so that we take more search terms and we funnel them down and we reduce the amount of things that we have to look at. I could, if I wanted, look at material types. I can do books, articles, journals, etc., etc. And I do want to stick with books. So let's just do that. And then a little farther down, I've got my search button, and I'll hit that. I don't want to do a publication date because I want to see how much I can get. Oh my gosh, look at that. It found no records. Let's change up heart health. Maybe I should just do heart. Let's see what happens. Nope, still nothing. So I'm doing something wrong here. What about cardiovascular? Still nothing? Okay, well then maybe I'm doing something wrong in my first search term. Maybe I should look at title and see what I come up with. Let's give it a try. Still not finding anything. So I'm thinking to myself, what's happening? Why is it going wrong? Let's go back to a search term that is a simplified search term. So if I do vegetarian or vegan, and I put parentheses around this because I want to look at this as one set of the search, and I do heart or cardio, and I'm using a truncation term so that I can get cardio, cardiovascular, anything that has cardio. Oh, this changed up what I was doing. So something that was going on that was making it a little too specialized. So, for example, here we have a search with page 1 out of 37 results, so 1 through 10 of 37. And notice that I have some refining limiters over on the side. This is like many of the article databases looking at what it thinks is relevant for me. So I could search by relevance. I could search by the newest, the oldest, title, or author. Let's stick with relevance because we can always reduce what our publication date looks like. This also tells me, hey, do you want it available in the library or do you want it full text online? If I were to choose full text online, let's see what happens with those results. I'm going to apply the filter, and this takes it down to 20 results, which means that 17 books are going to be available as full text. And then I can say, well, what are my source types? Well, I've got 15 books and 4 videos because remember, the catalog looks for books and videos, if you remember the search everything, and 1 government document. And then we have subject headings. So this is where you are going to see a difference between subjects in articles databases, whether it's a journal or a magazine, and in library catalogs, because the authority control for these subject headings lies with the Library of Congress. Everybody who creates a library record does it through the auspices of the Library of Congress and their subject headings. There's nobody going off and creating their own subject headings because we have a centralized database where we pull these records from so that you can go in and find stuff and figure out where it is. When you're looking at journal and magazine databases, the authority control can use Library of Congress subject headings, but there's also authority control that different databases and their companies use. Sometimes those mesh pretty well and sometimes they're different. And that is why when you are looking up articles for magazines, you're going to see such a difference in using keywords or even what you use as a subject term in one database for another. So library catalogs tend to be pretty straightforward and give you exactly the same thing. I could go here, I could go to Alaska, I could even go to another country, and if they use Library of Congress subject headings, whether they're in English or in their own language, they're going to find topics that are going to be related because we're using all of these subject headings. So that's the nice thing about a library catalog. It's really a way of defining something. The thing that is going to be difficult about this is that if you have a book that you're reading from it, it's going to take a lot longer to get through it than it would an article. So there are pros and cons, and you have to balance out what you're doing for any research for this. So notice how we're ranking them in order of what is like the first subject heading that is most prevalent, and that's nutrition, and that will be across 4 different items, and then diet and disease, health, preventative medicine of some sort. Let's see, did we have something up here? No, I thought I saw vegetarian. Notice that cardiovascular diseases, there are different ways of doing this. So if I chose, for example, cardiovascular diseases, system diseases, prevention, diseases, risk factors, and I apply those filters, I'm going to take this from 20 down to 1. Okay, so these are a lot of ways that you can narrow your search terminology. You can do this in databases as well. It tends to be easier to do within a catalog because this has been done for so long and it's so very much regulated that we don't really question it in the library profession. I'm just going to get rid of these filters so that we have a little bit of a broader way of looking at it. Okay, so let's look at the results. Remember, it's giving me a relevance ranking. So what we look at when we're looking at it is not necessarily the book itself. The first thing that you have to go to is the record. And so all the information in OPACS and in the back end of OPACS, so for Primo and for Alma, when it comes to OCC, puts together a record. So everything that you do at this record is attached to it. If I checked out this book, then that record would be associated with my name for the duration of the checkout. Once it is returned, and however we return ebooks or physical books, that record is wiped. And there's no way that you can take a look and see what was checked out unless, of course, your system has fines. And if that's the case, if your particular system, whether it's library or college, has fines on their books, then it will show what the fine is attached to. Because again, you use the integrated library system or the library service platform to keep everything consolidated and tied to each other. Anyhow, here's the record for vegetarian and vegan diets, your question answered. So I'm going to take a look at this and scroll through and see what it says and see if I can tell whether or not this is academic. So this is written by this particular author, Alice Richer. It gives us our subject. So if I was interested in food and society, nutrition, and vegetarian cooking, then it would tell me that that is the case. Notice that the keywords that I used are highlighted with yellow, vegetarian or vegan. And then it gives us a description of what the book is. So the little blurb that you get, like if you open up a book and on the cover is the information about it. Do I have anything close at hand? I do. I have a book called, I hope this is, no, it's going to be upside down. Sorry, or mirror image. This is called Land by Simon Winchester. And when I open up the front cover on this page, of course, is the blurb that's going to tell me a little bit about it. It's the same thing for the description. And then it gives us the contents of what's in it. These are probably chapter headings. And notice as we go down that the series is called the Q&A Health Guides. It was published by Greenwood Books in Westport, Connecticut in 2021. And then we have all these identifiers as well. And then we have some things that are related to it. Oops, sorry about that. So if you wanted to look for something similar, you could see it. So this is the record of the book. In an academic catalog, we can click on the link for online access. So I can click on Academic eBook Collection, type in my login and password, and because I am remote, this is what happens when I'm off campus, so this is probably what is happening for you as well. Hopefully this will work, and I'll be able to get to the book without too much trouble. We may need to come back to it. We'll see how it goes. Let me try typing in my password again and making sure that I have it. Ah, it worked. Okay, good. All right. No thanks, we're not updating the password. Okay, so this is in an academic collection, right? Let Let me get myself out of the way here. And here are the access options. So I can get the PDF full text. I can get it in EPUB. If you have it in EPUB, you can read it in a browser. I could download the book. To do that, I would have to be logged in. And then we have unlimited copies available. Now, check out what happens with this. So here's what you can do with it as an ebook. You can download, print, email, or save 50 pages. That's it. You can use Adobe Digital Editions to read this ebook. You can't copy and paste it. Here's a little bit more information that we're seeing that is going to be the same thing. Notice how there is a link to Alice Richer. Let's just click on it a minute and see what it says. Not a lot. It's just giving us a link to her other works. So I don't know very much about Alice Richer from here. I don't know what her background is. I would have to, I suppose, look at the book to see what her like qualifications for writing this are. One of the things I love about doing everything live is just watching how badly stuff goes depending on the Wi-Fi connection. So replicating the search might be difficult to look at, but it really is like a way that we are able to make it so that your experience mirrors my experience. So anything that you're seeing with this is being seen in real time on my end. Let's try logging in again and see if I can get to it. Oops. Feel free to speed run this. Okay, so back to reality, I'm hoping. This is very frustrating. All right, let's try it with another one. So scrolling down, we're looking for not where it's available in the stacks, but what the online access is. Let's take a look at this lacto-ovo vegetarian cuisine. Oh no, you know what? Beg your pardon. Let's not do that because this is a government document and we're not getting into those right now. Here we go. Diet, life expectancy, and chronic disease. And here is the online access. I can go to it that way and it takes me back down to the academic ebook collection. And this is going to be from the same publisher, so let's see if we can get in to this one. No, look at that. The connection was refused. All right, I'm going to bop to something else and let this churn a little bit. So here we have a public library catalog, right? And you probably seen these. If I were to go to, this is my public library, Farmington Community Library, and if I wanted to search, I could put in my search terms and it says, hey, let's default to the catalog. But if you really wanted to, you could look for events or you could search the entire web page itself. I don't want to search for events. I want to do vegetarian diet and heart. And let's see what happens when we do this. So this gives me 64 titles to look at. The raw food diet, gluten-free recipes, the DASH diet Mediterranean solution, gluten-free vegetarian vegan, living vegetarian, diabetes and heart healthy cookbook. Well, this is the first one I saw with heart in the title. The flexitarian cookbook, vegetarianism, the vegetarian cookbook, blah, 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 vegetarian, right? I think we have 10 for these as well. Let's take a look at the refined results over here. I have 49 online books and I have 16 at the library. So if I was to go to just looking at the library books, then it would say, okay, let's go back up to the top. Because again, this is sorting by relevancy. That's what the database is defaulting to. So it wants me to take a look at the dash Mediterranean diet. Again, this is the record of the book itself. So when I go in, I get a little bit of information about the book. I get to know where it is, and I find out what I may also want to take a look at as well. It's not hugely expansive compared to the Primo record in OCC. I can see the full table of contents as well, so that gives me sort of an idea of what is going to be in the book. Now, notice that you have appendices in here. You've got Appendix A through F. You've got notes, acknowledgments, index, and about the author. And we'd have to get the book to figure out who the author is and what they've done. So if that's the case, then I don't necessarily want something at the library. I want to look at something online. So let's choose that and see what it looks like. So a lot of these are going to be popular diets. It's not necessarily going to be something that is looking specifically at like heart healthy diet. Let's maybe take a look at this one, the 22-day revolution. If I wanted to look at that, oh no, see it's on the shelf as a book, or it's an e-audiobook. I don't want an e-audiobook. What about vegetarian intermittent fasting? Nope, also an e-audiobook. The Great Life Diet? Oh, this is an ebook. Let's see what happens when we go to get it. It wants me to log in. I'll log in. And it takes me to the record of it. So I can enjoy this title through Thursday, March 27th, right? And I have 7 checkouts remaining. Sounds great. So there are 2 copies checked out. I just checked out 2 copies for myself. Notice I don't have this. I have to go into my Hoopla account to get it. And so here is Hoopla, for example. And if I look at my currently borrowed titles, let's see if the Great Life Diet showed up. Look at that, there it is. And when I go to read it, it's setting in my ebook so that I could read it on a computer if I wanted to do that. While this is setting up, let me check really quick on this one. Yep, okay, we're going to go back to that. So there's a lot of accessibility, immediate accessibility, right? I have to be logged into my Hoopla account to get a Hoopla book that I have checked out from the library. I could have gone into Hoopla and looked at it specifically because Hoopla and Libby integrate with those library catalogs. So for example, if I'm looking at Libby, I could go in and do a search. Those are filters. Let's see, where's my search button? I think we're down here. Maybe not. Ah, there it is. So if I wanted to do a search for the same thing, vegetarian diets and heart, then I get 8 books and 2 audiobooks all on one page. Notice that there's going to be a difference in these. So here is several that these may look familiar to you if you have ever looked at this kind of thing before. Let me get down to the bottom. Okay, Forks Over Knives, the cookbook. Caldwell Esselstyn did this very small study, and it was basically not to be like diety, but it was how to have a fat-free vegetarian diet that would get all the fat out of your body basically and reduce the chances of your arteries hardening. This is the diet that Bill Clinton went on and was able to pretty much live for a longer period of time and not have as many heart problems that he had. So if I decide that I can borrow this, I can borrow it again for 21 days. And I can read it if I want to with Kindle, or I can read it on this device. I've read this book before. It's pretty intense. I tried the diet and it was like impossible. So here's the cover, and if I wanted to scroll, I'm hitting my right arrow key, and so I'm scrolling over. So here's all the information, and you can read it like this. It's not beautiful. And then ebooks are linked content, right? So, for example, if you're really complaining about like not having any fat on this diet, he's got a whole chapter on why you can't have heart healthy oils. So there you go. So again, a lot more facility to get this, but it means that you have to have a library card or some kind of membership association with whatever library you're going to so that you can get it. So there are plenty of ways to look for things, but there aren't plenty of ways to get it. Sorry, Hoopla's taken so long. It might not work well on this computer. Let's go back to this book, Diet, Life Expectancy, and Chronic Disease. So again, I'm going to move our closed captioning. So it's giving you a breakdown of what it's doing, right? While you study the health of Adventists, cancer rates, coronary heart disease, longevity, diet, and the risk of coronary heart disease. So when I jump to this, notice that it is a link. I'm taking our viewing lives in my hands by doing this, I think, because who knows how long it's going to take. It's not a beautiful experience. It's not as good, for example, as Libby, which even if it is, kind of ugly looking, at least puts everything on one screen, which you can just arrow over and take a look at. This is within the context of this frame where I would, wow, that was fast, have to scroll down. Sorry, I'm going to move this again. So if I scroll down, I can read this. This is the book. Boom, there it is, right? You've got it. So a couple of things that I want to show you from this. The nice thing that academic libraries do, and I'm going to just disappear myself a minute, gang, so you can see all this. Here are the options that I could go to. The table of contents, details about it. So this gives me a little bit more information about it, but it doesn't tell me who Gary Fraser is, for example. This is allowing me to share whatever information. Here's the citation. So if I wanted to cite this book, as you are going to have to do for your final annotated bib, I would choose my citation style. Remember, I'm asking you to do MLA, and we're working with the 9th edition. And so it puts it together for me. Boom, there it is. It's actually not horrible, although Fraser should be first before Gary. So a little bit of information is wrong with this, but you can, if you'd like, copy this and paste it into whatever word processing document you're looking at. So there you go. And I suggest that you use those kind of things because it makes your life so much easier. In Libby, we really don't have that option. If I were to go back and look, probably have to get out of this. There really isn't anything that says, oh, hey, here's a citation for it. I would have to create my own, I believe, because public libraries aren't necessarily interested in that kind of thing. But you do get information about the book itself. And do you get it about Dr. Esselstyn? No, you do not. So you would still have to look him up. Probably the best way of doing that is to do a search on whoever your author is as a lateral search. We'll talk about this more when we do evaluation of things. So if I were, for example, to go to Wikipedia and look up Caldwell Esselstyn, there he is. This will tell me who he is, if he's still living, what his background is, where he went to school, what he studied, what his diet work is about, any awards that he's written. So I do ask you to find out who the authors are for various books. You can do a Wikipedia search. You can do a generalized search. Let's say we wanted to do Gary Fraser. who's an author. Let's see what happens when we bring him up. We may find something, we may not. I'm going to, oops, it's because I spelled his name wrong, possibly. I'm going to put his name in double quotes and do a phrase search and see if that is a little bit better. Oh, look at, there he is. Here's Gary Fraser and the True Health Initiative. So there might be a little bit, he's even got a Wikipedia article about himself. Fantastic. That's great. So if we were doing a book that required that we were using his books, you could find some information for him. So that is, to a certain extent, what we're doing with this kind of searching for books. And I'm going to stop the share. And again, I would like for you to look for books. One has to be a scholarly work and one has to be a popular work. See what you can get, see how much information you can get. And again, if you run into any roadblocks, I am here to help you out. So with that, everybody, have a great whatever part of the week it is, and email me if you have any questions. Thank you.